Before you continue listening, pause for a moment. Rest your hand over your heart and take a slow, steady breath. Allow yourself to become fully present. Because what you're about to hear is more than a collection of words. It may be the message your spirit has quietly been waiting to receive. If this message reached you today, don't dismiss it as coincidence. Some truths reveal themselves only when we're emotionally prepared to understand them. There is a reason your emotions have felt stronger lately. There is a reason certain memories keep resurfacing when you least expect them. Somewhere someone has been holding your name in silence, carrying thoughts they have never spoken aloud. And now the universe is quietly aligning the circumstances for an encounter. Someone important is preparing to come into your life with something they have been unable to keep hidden any longer. Take another slow, deep breath before you hear the rest, because this message isn't meant to feel ordinary. If it has found you today, perhaps it's because your heart is finally ready to receive it. There is someone, whether they are still part of your life or someone from your past, who thinks about you far more often than you could imagine. They may have remained silent. They may have created distance between you. On the surface, it may have looked as though they had moved forward without looking back. But beneath that silence, something has shifted. A change has been unfolding inside them, one they can no longer ignore. Soon, this person will make their way toward you. It won't happen by random chance, nor will it be a casual conversation or an ordinary reunion. They are coming because the weight of what they've been carrying has become too heavy to hold alone. There is a truth they have kept locked away, and they feel compelled to finally share it with you. What they have to say may leave you genuinely surprised. Why this meeting feels impossible to avoid. Some connections seem to exist beyond logic. Time may pass, distance may grow, silence may stretch for months or even years, yet certain emotional bonds refuse to disappear. They remain present beneath the surface, untouched by pride, misunderstandings, or physical separation. Perhaps you've experienced unusual moments recently. Thoughts of this person suddenly entered your mind without any obvious trigger. You unexpectedly heard their name in conversation. They appeared in your dreams with remarkable clarity. Or maybe you felt waves of emotion that seemed to arrive without explanation, leaving you wondering where those feelings came from. Many people dismiss experiences like these as simple coincidences. But sometimes they can feel like reminders that certain emotional connections continue to exist even when there has been no contact. It's as though an invisible thread still links two people whose lives have become separated, quietly pulling their thoughts toward one another, despite the silence between them. Whether you see these moments as intuition, meaningful coincidence, or simply the mind revisiting an unfinished chapter, they can carry a powerful emotional weight. And when those feelings continue returning again and again, they often leave us wondering whether something important is still waiting to unfold. Before they ever considered reaching out, they did everything they could to bury these feelings. They kept themselves busy. They poured their energy into distractions. They convinced themselves they had already let go and that life had moved on. But whenever the world grew quiet, especially late at night, one thought continued to return. No matter how hard they tried to silence it, your memory kept finding its way back into their mind. And eventually, emotions that remain unspoken create a pressure that demands release. That's why this meeting feels as though it's been building for a long time. 2. What has been happening inside their mind? From the outside, they may appear completely fine. Perhaps they seem confident, successful, or even genuinely happy. But appearances rarely reveal what's happening beneath the surface. Internally, they've been caught in an ongoing struggle that few people around them would ever recognize. They revisit moments the two of you shared over and over again. They remember your voice, your expressions, the conversations that once felt ordinary, but now carry unexpected meaning. Small details they once overlooked have become impossible to forget. Questions continue to circle through their mind. Why do these feelings still exist? Why haven't I been able to truly move on? Why has no one else created the same connection? Those questions have led them toward a realization they never expected. The answer isn't comfortable because it forces them to acknowledge something they tried to avoid for a long time. You meant far more to them than they were willing to admit. Even more difficult is recognizing that what happened between you wasn't simply the result of bad timing or unfortunate circumstances. Deep down, they're beginning to believe they played a significant role in creating the distance. They now understand that they didn't fully appreciate the connection while they had the chance, and that realization carries a weight they can no longer ignore. 3. Why they remain silent for so long. You may naturally wonder, if they feel all of this, why didn't they say something sooner? The answer isn't as simple as not caring. Fear has been standing in their way. They feared rejection. They feared discovering that your life had moved forward without them. They feared your strength, your independence, and the possibility that you no longer needed them. Most of all, they feared confronting the choices they wish they could change. Remaining silent felt easier than risking an honest conversation. As long as nothing was said, they could avoid facing the consequences of their own actions. But silence has its own cost. With every day that passed without reaching out, the unspoken truth only became louder. What once felt like protection slowly transformed into emotional exhaustion. Eventually, avoiding the conversation became more painful than having it. That's when they realized silence could no longer give them the peace they were searching for. 4. The moment everything shifted. Recently, something happened that changed the direction of their thinking. It may have been a seemingly ordinary moment. Perhaps they saw you smiling, heard an update about your life, crossed paths with a familiar memory, or found themselves surrounded by people while still feeling completely alone. Whatever the trigger was, it reached a place inside them they could no longer ignore. In that instant, one thought became unmistakably clear. If I never speak my truth, I'll carry this regret for the rest of my life. That realization wasn't driven by impulse or temporary emotion. It came from a much deeper place. A quiet certainty that continuing to hide their feelings was no longer possible. 5. Why this conversation may surprise you. This isn't simply a conversation to catch up or exchange polite words. They aren't coming just to ask how you've been. They're coming to express everything they left unsaid. The emotions they concealed behind pride. The regrets they've carried in silence. The feelings they convinced themselves would eventually disappear but never did. For a long time, you may have believed they were emotionally distant, unaffected, or completely detached from what happened between you. Yet, the reality may be very different. They cared far more deeply than they ever allowed themselves to show. Their feelings ran deeper than their actions suggested. Much of what they experienced remained hidden, locked behind fear, hesitation, and an inability to be vulnerable. Learning that may completely change the way you understand the silence between you. 6. The confession. The words they've been holding back aren't something they've shared with anyone else. They've rehearsed this conversation countless times in their mind, wondering how to explain what they've carried for so long. And when they finally stand before you, the truth they reveal won't simply be about the past. It will be the honesty they've wished they had the courage to speak from the very beginning. 6. The confession they've carried in silence. They've replayed this moment more times than they could ever count. In their mind, the conversation has happened over and over again. They've imagined every possible outcome. Your expression, your silence, your questions, even the possibility that you might simply walk away. No matter how many times they've rehearsed it, they still don't know what will happen when the moment finally arrives. But one thing has become undeniable. They can no longer keep pretending. Whatever the outcome may be, they know they have to speak honestly. Even if telling the truth means risking everything they still hope for, they would rather face that uncertainty than continue living behind silence. The words they long to say are simple yet incredibly difficult. I was wrong. I didn't handle what we had the way I should have. I didn't truly understand how to love in the way you deserved. For someone who has spent so long protecting their pride, admitting those words feels harder than losing the relationship itself. Letting down those emotional walls requires a level of vulnerability they've avoided for a very long time. 7. What they understood only after losing you. Sometimes distance reveals what closeness never could. When someone is constantly present, it's easy to overlook the value they bring. Only after they're gone does their absence become impossible to ignore. That's exactly what has been happening within them. Time has given them perspective. They've come to recognize qualities in you they once took for granted. Your calm presence created a sense of peace they didn't fully appreciate. Your loyalty wasn't something temporary. It was genuine. Your kindness wasn't performative. Your care came from a place of sincerity. As they've continued living their life, they found themselves comparing new experiences and new people to what they once shared with you. Again and again, something feels missing. Not because everyone else is lacking, but because the connection you shared carried a depth they didn't recognize until it was no longer there. Now they understand that what existed between you wasn't ordinary. It wasn't simply another relationship or another chapter. It was the kind of connection many people spend years searching for without ever finding. 8. Why this meeting feels so frightening. As much as they want to see you, they're also deeply afraid of what happens next. Because once the truth is spoken, there is no returning to silence. Everything changes after honesty enters the room. They know they're risking disappointment. They may face rejection. They may discover you've completely moved forward. They may receive the closure they feared all along. Yet, despite those possibilities, they've realized something even more painful. Living with unanswered questions and lifelong regret feels heavier than facing whatever answer you choose to give. So instead of remaining comfortable behind silence, they're choosing courage. Even though courage offers no guarantees. 9. What you should remember before this meeting. This message isn't only about their journey. It's also about yours. You've changed. You've grown through experiences that once challenged you. You've learned difficult lessons. You've become stronger, wiser, and more emotionally grounded than you were before. Because of that growth, don't approach this meeting from a place of expectation or emotional dependence. Approach it with clarity. Allow yourself to listen carefully, but don't become captivated by beautiful words alone. Pay attention to consistency. Notice their actions. Observe whether their behavior reflects the truth they're speaking. Words can create hope. But lasting change is always revealed through action. Honesty without responsibility has very little value. Genuine transformation is something that can be seen, not simply promised. Trust what you observe just as much as what you hear. 10. The shift you'll notice the moment you meet. When this encounter finally happens, something about it may feel different from every interaction you've shared before. Time may seem to slow down. The noise around you may fade into the background. There can be an unusual sense of familiarity that's difficult to explain, as though your heart recognizes something before your mind has time to make sense of it. Whether you see that feeling as intuition, emotional memory, or simply the significance of reconnecting with someone who once mattered deeply, the moment is likely to carry a different emotional weight. You'll sense that this isn't an ordinary conversation. It will feel like the closing of one chapter and the opening of another, where truths that remained hidden for so long finally have the chance to be spoken openly. What happens afterward will depend not only on what is said, but on the choices both of you make once the silence has finally been broken. 10. The energy you'll notice when you meet. When the moment finally arrives, you'll probably sense it before a single word is spoken. The atmosphere may feel heavier than expected, filled with emotion, anticipation, and everything that has remained unspoken for so long. There may be pauses, lingering glances, and moments where silence says more than conversation ever could. Whether you view this encounter as destiny, timing, or simply the natural result of unfinished emotions, it carries a purpose. Its role isn't necessarily to bring two people back together. Its purpose is to bring honesty into the open. Sometimes truth leads to a new beginning. Other times it offers the closure both hearts have needed. Either way, this meeting exists to reveal what has remained hidden. 11. The truth they've been afraid to admit. After carrying these feelings for so long, there is one confession they can no longer avoid. They never truly stopped loving you. They tried everything they could to convince themselves otherwise. They threw themselves into work, new routines, new distractions, and perhaps even new relationships. They believed that time alone would erase what they felt. But genuine emotions rarely disappear simply because we ask them to. Instead, they wait quietly beneath the surface, resurfacing whenever the heart grows still enough to hear them. Eventually, pretending becomes more exhausting than accepting the truth. Now, they're ready to acknowledge what they've denied for so long. Not because they're certain of the outcome, but because they can no longer live as though those feelings never existed. 12. Why this moment carries so much meaning. Whatever happens after this conversation, life won't be exactly the same. Perhaps it opens the door to a completely new chapter built on honesty and greater understanding. Perhaps it becomes the conversation that finally allows both of you to move forward, without unanswered questions. Either outcome has value because unfinished stories have a way of lingering in the heart. When truth is finally spoken, something shifts internally. The uncertainty begins to fade, replaced by a sense of peace that only honesty can create. Sometimes healing comes through reunion. Sometimes it comes through acceptance. Both can be equally meaningful. 13. How to respond when they finally speak. If this conversation unfolds, give them the opportunity to say everything they've carried for so long. Resist the urge to interrupt or rush to conclusions. Allow the entire truth to emerge before deciding how you feel about it. Listen not only to their words, but also to the sincerity behind them. Then, when it's your turn, respond from a place of calm rather than impulse. Your clarity is more powerful than a reaction driven by emotion. Take the time you need to decide what aligns with your peace, your boundaries, and the person you've become. 14. The most important thing to remember above everything else. Remember this. You are not standing in this moment because you're being tested. You're standing here because you're being given something many people never receive. The truth. Whether that truth leads to reconciliation, recognition, closure, or an entirely different path. It offers something invaluable. Certainty. You survived the silence that once left you questioning everything. You carried yourself through disappointment. You learned, healed, and became stronger because of experiences that once seemed impossible to overcome. Never underestimate how much you've grown. Whatever happens next, don't forget the strength that brought you here. One final message, especially for you. Before this message comes to an end, pause for just a moment and ask yourself a simple question. What did it awaken inside you? Did it leave you feeling hopeful, peaceful, reflective? Or perhaps it gave you a sense of clarity you hadn't felt before. Sometimes life doesn't place answers in front of us to bring another person back into our lives. Sometimes the answers you've been searching for don't arrive to restore what was lost. Instead, they appear to reconnect you with the version of yourself that may have been buried beneath disappointment, unanswered questions, or emotional pain. We often believe that clarity must come through another person's actions or explanations. But in reality, the greatest clarity often comes from within. It arrives when you finally understand your own worth, your own strength, and the lessons your experiences were trying to teach you all along. If you've spent months or even years wondering why someone entered your life, why they left, or why certain emotions still linger, remember that not every journey is designed to end with reconciliation. Some connections exist to awaken something inside you. They challenge you to grow, to heal, and to discover parts of yourself that may have remained hidden without that experience. Even painful relationships can become powerful teachers when viewed through the lens of personal growth instead of loss. Never question the sincerity of what your heart experienced. If you felt a deep connection with someone, those feelings were real because they were real to you. Your emotions weren't imaginary simply because circumstances changed or because the relationship didn't unfold the way you hoped. Feelings can be genuine even when outcomes are uncertain. The value of your love isn't determined by whether another person stayed. It's determined by the honesty with which you gave it. It's also important to release the belief that you somehow imagined everything. Many people look back after heartbreak and begin rewriting their own memories. They convince themselves they were foolish, that they misunderstood every moment, or that they cared too much. But emotional vulnerability isn't evidence of weakness. It simply means you allowed yourself to experience life sincerely. That openness is something many people struggle to embrace. You were never too emotional. In a world that often encourages people to hide their feelings, showing genuine emotion can feel uncomfortable. Yet, emotions are not flaws to be fixed. They are signals that reveal what matters to us. Feeling deeply doesn't mean you're fragile, it means your heart has the courage to connect, to care, and to invest itself fully. Those qualities should never become reasons for shame. Likewise, loving someone deeply was never a mistake. Love itself isn't what causes suffering. Pain usually comes from unmet expectations, poor communication, fear, or incompatibility, not from the simple act of caring. Loving wholeheartedly demonstrates bravery because it requires trust, vulnerability, and hope. Even when love isn't returned in the way we expect, the ability to love remains one of the most beautiful qualities a human being can possess. The true lesson isn't to stop loving. The lesson is learning how to love without abandoning yourself. Healthy love allows compassion and generosity while still protecting your own peace. It means maintaining your boundaries, respecting your needs, and remembering that your value never depends on another person's ability to recognize it. You can open your heart without sacrificing your self-respect. You can care deeply while also knowing when it's time to let go. If this message has spoken to something within you, allow it to become more than comforting words. Let it become a reminder that choosing truth is always more powerful than clinging to uncertainty. It's easy to remain trapped in endless questions about what someone else thinks or feels. But lasting peace comes from accepting what is real rather than chasing what is unknown. Clarity may not always provide the answer we hoped for, but it always gives us the freedom to move forward. Choosing self-respect over fear is another important step in healing. Fear often convinces us to settle for less than we deserve because we're afraid of losing someone or being alone. Self-respect reminds us that genuine relationships are built on honesty, mutual effort, and emotional responsibility. You deserve connections where your presence is appreciated, your feelings are valued, and your love is returned with equal sincerity. Inner peace grows when you stop measuring your worth through someone else's choices. Another person's inability to understand your value does not diminish your value. Their silence does not erase your kindness. Their distance does not make your love any less meaningful. Your worth has always existed, independently of anyone else's approval. The more you embrace that truth, the less power uncertainty holds over your life. If you're ready to welcome greater honesty into your journey, let the words, "I choose clarity," become more than a comment. Let them become a personal commitment to seek truth even when it's uncomfortable. Let them remind you to trust your intuition, accept reality with courage, and move toward relationships built on openness rather than confusion. If you're ready to protect your heart while continuing to love with wisdom, let "I know my worth" serve as a daily affirmation. It reflects the understanding that your value isn't earned through someone else's attention or affection. It's something that has always belonged to you. Knowing your worth means refusing to chase what consistently walks away and choosing instead to invest your energy where it is genuinely appreciated. And if this message reached you at exactly the moment you needed to hear it, perhaps there's a reason it resonated so deeply. Sometimes we encounter certain words not because they predict the future, but because they help us understand the present. They remind us that healing is possible, growth is always available, and every experience, whether joyful or painful, can become part of the person we're meant to become. Thank you for spending this time with Psychonym.